welcome to the first episode in this series on Unreal Engine 4. In this video, we're going to get the environment set up, get the tools set up, and see where it goes. We'll start building up our game. Enjoy the video. After you install the Unreal Engine and you run it the first time, you will get this launcher. And hopefully you will have a version of the Unreal Engine up here. Now, at the time of this recording, I'm using engine version number 4.24.3. So if you want to use the same exact engine, you should be able to, even if it's later down the road and there are newer versions out, you should be able to load this one into here using the download feature, and that will appear here in your library. You can have different versions of the engine loaded onto your system. You can see that I've got 5 versions of Unreal Engine loaded on my machine. And that's because I have projects on those different versions, and you kind of need the correct version for the project you built in. You can upgrade projects, but I typically don't. Unless I have a particular need to. So we're going to be using Unreal Engine 4.24.3 in this video series. If an upgrade comes out in the middle of the series, which it may, I probably won't change to that updated version until I do another series of lessons on it. So during this course, the entire course will be in 4.24.3. Some exception is the last digit changing. I might upgrade that because it might be a bug fix or something that's important. But I won't go to a new version in the middle number, the 2.4. I won't go to 2.5 or 2.6 or whatever they come out with. So from here, in this panel under your library, you can launch the version that you have by clicking the launch button. And we will bring that up. And so here is the selector create a new project window. Now what we want is down here under new project categories. These are projects that I have on my system. We don't want to open any of those. We want to go to games. Under here you have different kinds of things you can do, and we might do video series in the future on doing films and television and live events, or architecture and engineering and construction and automotive and product design and so forth, but those would be future video series. For now, we're going to do games and come down here and click next. Now, what we want is a blank scene. We're going to build everything. In fact, we're going to, whatever is left in this, we're probably going to delete, except maybe this floor, and reconstruct it so that I can show you how all the parts of this actually work and what they are and what they're for. So we want to start with a blank project. So click on blank project and click next. We'll be putting our own characters together. Initially, we'll put a first person character together, and then we'll put a third person character together in future videos. We want this to be blueprint selected. We're going to do C++ at some point in time in the future, but right now we're just going to work with blueprints. We can always add C++ to the project later and work with that. Quality, that's up to you. I've got it set on maximum quality, and I'll tell you, I have a, at the time of this recording at least, my machine has an RDX 480 Radeon video card with 8 gig of RAM, and so it can handle, with all of its GPUs, this maximum quality. If your machine is lesser in power, you might want to move that quality down a little bit on here. You can also move it down in the engine once things are running. And we'll leave ray tracing disabled for now. That's very dependent upon your video card as well. We want to start off with a desktop console application, and starter content, let's say no starter content. We're not going to use any of Unreal's starter content. To be perfectly honest, it's nice, but it's too easy. And I want you to learn how to construct your own content, so I don't want the crutch of having any starter content. We're going to build our own textures, our own materials, our own assets from scratch. Like I said, with the exception of animated characters. I'm not going to be doing animated characters. I don't even have any personal skill in that. So let's go to my project, though we will be animating some machines. Machines are relatively easy to animate. Human beings, very hard. Even animals are not that easy to animate. So we'll name the project, and I'm going to name this project. First of all, I want to make sure that I am in an appropriate place here. No, I want to change my directory to this Unreal course, and I'm going to create a directory here called VID, called video series. This is mainly for my management. You can put this in whatever folder you want on your system. It's just a way for me to keep organized as to what's what. So I'm just going to call this, we'll just make it real simple. We'll call it shooter game, because that's what we're going to do initially, is build a very simple first-person shooter and put some interesting things to do and shoot in the game. So let's go ahead and create that project. Click on Create Project, and we'll wait for it to come up. So now we are in the Unreal Engine editor. In this main screen, we have our main scene with all of this stuff in it, and we're going to be removing all of that stuff. Except maybe the floor. Well, actually, we'll remove the floor too, and I'll show you how to put that in. Over on this side over here is a panel with a whole variety of tools. There is a lot of stuff going on in here, and we will get to it, and I will teach you about these panels as we go through each area, and we use them. Then I'll teach you about the panel and how it works. One of the most important views down here at the bottom, where you see this content browser, is this one. I like to pop this little icon open here so that I get a folder view as well as the file view, and this is very much like a file explorer. It's the content browser. It's where we will find all of our assets and everything we're working with. We won't worry about these tabs right now. The output log tells us information about what's going on in the game, and the message log tells us about things that are interesting. We'll see those come up as we start working with things like blueprints. The class viewer is just all the different classes that are available. We will get into those as we start creating things like blueprints, and we'll work with different kinds of classes, and I'll explain what those are for. Up here in the upper right hand corner is my world outliner. This shows everything that's currently in our world, and we really don't want any of this at the moment. So what we're going to do is go highlight all of these and just delete them, and click yes, and they're gone, and we have a black screen. We have a completely empty map right now, and down here, when we get to having stuff in there, are the details. This shows you the details of things that you click on, and I'll get to those details. We'll work with this a great deal. This particular tab is one I like to keep open. It's called World Settings. If you don't have World Settings on your screen, you can come up here to Window and go down here and find World Settings and turn it on, and then you can move it to whatever place on the screen that you want it. So that's how I'm kind of set up. If you want to set up just like me, that's fine. I'll leave this up on the screen for a few seconds so you can take a look at it and set your system up. Otherwise, we will move on to the next section. All right. So the first thing that we want in our world here that's completely black is a light. We can't see. It's black, so we need a light. So let's take and find our lights, and let's look at here at the kinds of lights that we have available. There is a directional light. A directional light shines light in one direction. Wherever it is in the world doesn't matter, because it just tells the entire world there's light coming from this direction, which is very much what sunlight is like. Sunlight is coming from so far away in the real world that by the time it gets here, it is essentially parallel. It's hitting the entire Earth from one single direction. Now, you can quibble with that a tiny bit. There is a slight angular deviation, but in any local environment around you, you're not going to be able to even measure that angular deviation. It is really coming in very, very close to parallel. And this is the light that we're going to use. Point lights are a spot where light radiates outward from that point. So it's going in many directions all around you, and it has a range, and it will light up an area. A spotlight is much like a point light, except it's not coming out in all directions. It's coming out only in a set of directions and cone that you specify. And then there's this reactive light and a skylight, and we'll be working with the skylight here shortly. So let's start by taking a directional light and dragging it into our scene and putting it in. Well, we still don't really see anything because there's nothing in the scene to shine light on. But while this is in the scene, I'm going to make sure it's selected, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the Details tab. The Details tab down here, let me open this out just a little. We don't need as much room up here as we do down here. This is the transform, and this tells the system where that object is in the world, what its rotation is, where it's pointed. In this case, where it's pointed determines what direction that light actually comes from. The scale, which doesn't matter for a light, but for three-dimensional objects, the scale tells the size of it in the X, Y, and Z locations. And mobility is an area about whether it's completely stationary, a static object, or movable, and we will get into those as we start building other types of devices. In fact, at some point in time, we're going to take this light and actually make it movable so we can change the direction of light as the day changes. And we'll work on a day-night cycle at some point in the video series, but not just yet. So we've got that in our scene. Let's grab a skylight and drop it into the scene. Geometry in this, and let's just take a box and drag it into the scene and put it here, and we see it's all lit up, very bright, and we can grab it and move it around. So let me show you a little bit about that. We can grab this box by the arrows and move it. We can also grab it by these little side pieces here and move it in any of these directions, or we can move it in these directions just by grabbing these little flat panels. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of things here with the transform. I want to place this first of all at 0, 0, 0. So I'm just going to come over here, and you see this reset to default. There's this little tiny arrow over here. It says reset to default. If I reset that, it's set to 0. This is now sitting at 0, 0, 0 in my world. And this light here, if we change its rotation, we'll look a little bit at our controls here. Up here in this area, we've got 3 controls. This allows us to move it. This allows us to rotate it. And this allows us to scale it. What I want to do right now is take this and rotate it and see how the light on that object changes. And it may not, yeah, there it's changing a little bit. So we're pointing away from the object now, and we're pointing towards it now, so we're changing the light. You can always check up here if you want to select something you can't find it in the object, in the world. You can check up here. So a little bit about mouse movement really quick. If I press my left mouse button and move the mouse, I'm rotating my view around like this. If I press my right mouse button and move, I get the same movement like this, rotating around like a trackball, except I can now use my WSAD keys to move my camera view from my viewport so that I can fly around the scene and look at it from different angles. So that's very simple. I'm just holding the right mouse button and using my WASD keys to move the camera around. And we see we've got a grid down here. So we've got a light. We have a directional light. That's going to be our sunshine. We can adjust the color of that down here if you want to make it. Most people think the sun is a little bit yellow, and it tends to look a little bit better on the scene if you make it just a very faint yellow in this color. At least it's more pleasing on the eyes. And that becomes our sun. So the next thing that we want, we just go up here and type in sky. We'll find here this blueprint sky sphere. We drop this in. For now, what I want to do is just go to my box brush that I've got here, and by the way, I just double clicked on that and it centered it so I can bring up anything that I want to see, like the skylight, okay, or the box brush, just by double clicking on it, and I'm kind of centered on that now. and so I can move around with my mouse here. And I'm going to fly up a little bit so that I can see this a little bit better. I'm going to go over here to scale, click the scale button, and I get these scale things. I'm just going to open this box brush up a great deal like this so that we have a floor here, so we're not staring at all that color all the time. So here's our basic setup. We've got our directional light, our BP sky sphere, and our skylight, and our initial floor that we'll be able to walk on once we get things set up. There's a few other things that we can add into here. We can add into it our player start, but we don't have a player to connect to that yet. We're going to build that that character up very soon here. In fact, coming up in just a minute. So, or possibly in the next video. I don't know at what point in time I'm going to cut this yet. So there's our basic setup. Let's see what else we can add into here. We can go back here to our geometry. Let's kill this and click the X and it'll clear that off. We can look at our geometry. There's a variety of things that that you get. You get steps and spiral stairs, spheres, cylinders, and cones that you can add into the game, and you can do a whole variety of things with these. You can scale this up, scale it down. Over here in the properties, there's a whole bunch of settings, the brush settings, the brush shape, so we can change the step height, step width, inner radius. We can make this thing bigger. We can increase the number of steps on it, so we can do some cool stuff like that. Build that way up. Got a lot of steps. So let's kill that. We'll just delete that spiral step, and we'll delete these stairs for now. We'll build something up with these box brushes. They're kind of fun to play with. They don't. They're very efficient. Very efficiently used in the engine, so we can build some interesting things. But this is going to be a test setup for testing rigs and testing our character and testing how things go with the game. I want to make this floor space a little bit bigger here, just for myself. Let's make it a little bit bigger this way and a little bit bigger this way, and make sure that everything came out with that okay. Yep. All right, thanks for watching this first video in this tutorial series on Unreal Engine 4. In this video, we got the environment set up, we got some lighting set up, a floor, and took a look at the engine and the editor and how things work and moved around in it. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next video, we're going to start setting up the first-person character and moving around in the scene. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe. And if you want to get notifications whenever I upload a video, hit that notify button. Thanks, and I'll talk to you later.